Curriculum Design and Development from the book Curriculum Development in Language Teaching. This is the part from chapter 1, the origins of language curriculum development. So through this book, the discussion of the processes in developing, implementing, and evaluating the language programs. Also, it has the discussion of learning and mastering a new language, and how teachers try to plan for the language course, prepare the teaching materials, and teach their classes. Some of the questions that the book addresses regard the educational principles, the activities, the values, the interests, the practices that reveal those principles, and also critically examining the practices that result from them. The framework that they are using have some questions regarding the procedures that determine the content of a language program, the learner's needs. How can we determine the learner needs? The contextual factors that we have to consider when we plan a language program, the activities for the teaching. The factor to reconsider in planning the syllabus, units, and the teaching methodologies. How will we select, adapt, design the materials? And how can we measure the effectiveness of a language program? So those questions are all related to language program and also curriculum development. So when we think about developing a curriculum, we'll think about knowledge, the skills, the value that the students will learn. What are the experiences that they will get through the learning outcomes? We'll think about the educational system. How can we plan, measure, and evaluate the teaching and the learning? When we think about a curriculum for a language, we'll think about how can we design the language program, revise it, implement it, and also evaluate the language program. If we think about history regarding the curriculum development, we will think about the syllabus design, we'll think about the content, the instruction, what we will teach and what we will test or assess. So that's how we will design a curriculum starting with a syllabus. So when we develop a curriculum, we'll think about processes. We'll start with the needs of the students, the aims, the objectives, the appropriate syllabus, the course structure, the teaching methods, materials, the evaluation of the program. And that began in 1960s. If we discuss the teaching methodologies from 19th to 20th century, so we start with the grammar translation, direct method, structural method, reading method, audiolingual method, situational method, communicative approach. So we think about what we need to be taught, what are the content of the instruction, the suitable appropriate syllabus for a specific teaching method, because it depends. Sometimes with different teaching method we might use suitable syllabus for that teaching method. So the structural method, we think about the content and the syllabus. We think about the vocabulary and the grammatical content of a language course. We think about how we selected and how we graded the gradation. This means the sequence, the order. So here we'll explain more about the structural method, which contain the vocabulary and the grammar, and how we sequence the teaching method through this. So we start with the initial preparation. So that means we orient the student toward the language learning. So we prepare them. Habit forming. So we establish correct habits. So from the word habits, that means they practice and have the habit. Accuracy. So we'll try to avoid inaccurate language. So the correct language to use. Gradation. It means each stages prepare the students for the next. So it's like what the steps and the stages, the sequence. Proportion, each aspect of language giving emphasis. So the emphasis for each aspect of the language, the importance, the focus. Concreteness, movement from the concrete to the abstract. The concrete is specific to the abstract is more general. Interest. So we think about the student interest all the time. Order of progression. So hearing will be before speaking and will be before writing. So the progress, the natural progress, so that means we teach the speaking and then we teach what? The writing. Multiple line of approach, so there are many different ways used to teach the language as the structural method. We have to think about the content and the syllabus underlying this method. We will determine the vocabulary and the grammatical content from the selection and gradation, the stages. So the stage of the selection. What should be selected from corpus and textbooks? So is it impossible to teach the whole language at the same time? To choose the appropriate unit of a language for teaching purposes? To choose the most useful procedures for learners. So when we do the selection, so we think about the whole language means all skills, the 4 skills, the reading, listening, speaking, and writing. So can we teach all these skills at the same time? So we have to think about what is the suitable unit that fit with the teaching purpose. What is the purpose of our teaching? Do we need to focus on listening or speaking or writing? And what are the beneficial, useful procedures for learners? So we try different methods and we think what are the most useful procedure or process for the learner to learn. There are 2 aspects of selection. So we will select vocabulary and select the grammar. So the idea of the syllabus design started in the early 20th century. When we think about how we selected the vocabulary, we know that vocabulary is most important because even with the natural way of learning the language, we start with learning the vocabulary. So we have to think what words should be taught in a second language. So that depends on the objective of the course and also the amount time available for teaching. For example, especially let's say for the IELTS, we know that IELTS we have 2 types, academic and also the professional. So the academic is mostly for the students who want to study for their undergraduate or graduate, so it's more academic. So that's the objective course. And also the time for that will be maybe long, so they have different schedule, specific schedule for that. For the professional, it can be different because they want to just to communicate their jobs, and also the time of learning, teaching, and also the recommunication might be for a long time because they want to use it in their own life and also in their jobs. So it depends. Okay, so who will select the vocabulary? Can be the textbook author, So will that give us an reliable result? So example here, teaching a language spoken in Hong Kong, and that's how many words in a text. So from that figure, we can see that a substantial percentage of the corpus, 63.4%, consists of words that occurred in only one of the 5 texts. This word could not, therefore, be measured to belong to the essential vocabulary of Cantonese for second language learners and will not be worth learning. Only words that occurred in 3 or more of the texts could sensibly be described as being important vocabulary. So we have to think about the vocabulary that we will teach it for the student based on the purpose. So if we think about other example of vocabulary usage of Time magazine, okay, for magazine. So they have words occur in everyday text, 3,000 words, 85%. Words occur in everyday text, extra 6,000 words, 100%. Words occur in everyday text, half of words only, one time. So recognize 85 words is not the same as understanding 85% of the text. Text comprehension is not just a function of the preparation of familiar words, but depends on the subject of the text, which reader is already familiar with the subject. So, based on this, the Time magazine, we reconsider the vocabulary, how many of these words, and do we use it for every day or not. So when we try to understand the text, we try to understand the familiar words, and it depends if, for example, let's say if we have a learner in hospital in medical context, or a learner in bakery who's baking, any kind of cake or whatever, okay? So the vocabulary that they will gain and they want to learn will be different. Let's say if we switch. So if we got the one who work in the bakery to the hospital in a medical context, will not be easy for him to understand, because that is not the thing that is familiar with that environment and with the words. So it will be difficult for him to learn in that subject. Okay, so if we want to select the vocabulary, how can we do that? So we think about the frequency of words. That means how many repeated when we plan for language teaching. But if we think about what are the words are essential and useful for this specific learner with a specific context and with specific subject. So we have to analyze the type of the language also and the vocabulary they are using. You have to think about the need of the target learner, the students, what they need. So when we try to select vocabulary to be taught, we have to think about the frequency, the need of the student, and the usefulness of the words. Will he use it or not? So we can teach the learner what he needs, what he wants, what is benefit for him. So here another example. So difference between frequency and range in 1 million word corpus. So we can see the first column, frequency of the word in the corpus. The second is the number of the text types the word occurred in out of total of 15. And the third column is the number of individual text sample a word occurred in. So here maximum 500 samples, 200 words. So here is like a corpus, so you can see these words, how many twice repeated, and text samples, and the type of word.